A native of Shreveport, Louisiana, Dr. William Shelton Gray, Jr., also referred to as Bill or Woods, had an academic specialty in modern English and American literature. He served as a professor of English and the chairman of the English department at Randolph-Macon College in Ashland, Virginia from 1968 to 1992. He earned his BA degree at Centenary College in Shreveport in 1950, his MA degree at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge in 1960, his PhD degree at the University of Exeter in England in 1964. He also attended Harvard, Tulane, Arizona, and New York universities for several years. Before joining the faculty at Randolph-Macon College in 1968, as professor of English and chairman of the English department, Dr. Gray taught at Louisiana State University, Shreveport, Louisiana, Olivet College in Olivet, Michigan, where he also chaired the English department, at Augsburg College in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he chaired the English department, and at Pembroke College in Pembroke, North Carolina. Gray's area of expertise also allowed him to develop a number of relationships with both English and American writers and poets, including Tennessee Williams and Gore Vidal. His most intimate friendship appears to have been with Tennessee Williams. Gray first met Williams in 1948 while he was a student at Tulane University in New Orleans. Gray describes the encounter and Tennessee Williams within his interviews at Randolph-Macon.
It was a rainy day and I didn't have an umbrella, so I ducked into a bar. In those days, all the bars in New Orleans were darkly lit. Suddenly I realized that someone had sat down next to me, so we began talking. The man told me that he was a writer, but in New Orleans everyone said they were a writer or an artist, so I was skeptical. I asked him what he had published. He said he'd only published a few short stories, but he had written a play that was now on Broadway. I asked him the play's name, and he replied, The Glass Menagerie. Now I'm playing along with what I thought was a great joke. I said, So I assume you're Tennessee Williams. What a coincidence. I'm William Faulkner. After talking longer, he proved that he was indeed Tennessee.
At the time, Williams was well known, but not famous internationally, and had just finished writing The Rose Tattoo. Gray would always visit Williams when he was in town.
We like the same people. We like the same places. We like to do the same things. We could be silent together for hours. We like to read aloud to each other. We enjoyed the same things. Tennessee is not an intellectual. He is not a person of ideas. He's very spontaneous, very intuitive. He is a person of feeling, a person of emotion rather than of intellect.
Several years later, Williams gained more recognition around the globe for his works. His fame caused him to spend more time in New York than in New Orleans. This is when Williams talked Gray into enrolling in New York University. This allowed the two to see each other more often than they did in New Orleans. It also gave Gray the chance to meet several important writers and poets through Williams.
I got to know Williams in New York City and delightfully discovered that our tastes were the same. We saw each other practically every day from 1952 to 1955. Tennessee introduced me to William Ing, Carson McCullers, Truman Capote, Gore Vidal, and so very many other people who have enriched my life.
Gray developed a close relationship with Gore Vidal after he was introduced to him by Tennessee Williams, often seeing him in the early and mid-1950s while in New York. It was Gray that introduced his long-standing college friend, Joanne Woodward, to Vidal. This relationship eventually led to their engagement, which was later called off. Vidal later on met his long-term partner, Howard Austen, whom Gray also built a closeness with. Gray continued to visit and correspond with Vidal in Austen until his death in 1992. Gray described Vidal as a figure that was both friendly and courteous. The Gore Vidal collection contains 21 volumes, of which 13 are first editions and 8 are later editions. The set contains most of Vidal's first published novels, 11 of which are inscribed by Gore Vidal to Dr. Gray. The inscriptions made by Vidal provide information on where and when the parts of each novel were written, later copies that contain certain changes made by Vidal, how the failures and accomplishments of these particular works changed his career, and he describes his memoirs during the creation of these novels. In addition, there are a series of letters from Vidal, Austen, Woodward, and Paul Newman, with the correspondence going into detail about Vidal's work on several novels and within the film industry, his feelings over criticism and America's hate toward him, the lawsuits he had to face, his relationship with his former fiancée, his disgust over Tennessee Williams, and his views on literature. Austen talks about living and constantly moving with Vidal, the life and fame of his lover, his relationship with Vidal, and mentions the friendship between himself, Vidal, and the infamous Clay Shaw, the only man prosecuted for his potential involvement in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Woodward expresses her life as an actress, feelings over her marriage to Newman, and her pregnancies, and discusses meeting with Vidal and Austen several times. There are also 3 inscribed photographs, one of a young Gore Vidal, and the remaining 2 of a young Joanne Woodward and her children.